hybrid workforce. We all went through 2020. How many of us were scrambling to scale in just a weekend to be able to meet the needs of users being everywhere? That really poses a challenge. SASE, hey man, we got you. We can scale with you. Cloud migration, already mentioned it, that apps, data, everything's been moving for a little while. Not as fast as the users getting out of here, but that all has been moving. And then we had geo exceptions. SASE tells you, as you grow, as you're deciding when your organization says, hey, we want to get into this area, we want to open an office in London, we want to open a new space in New York, maybe we're going to go to Charlotte and open up something. We need to be able to respond in a way that it doesn't take weeks, months to be able to spin that up. As an organization, we need to be agile. We need to be able to meet that expansion so that the company can continue to develop, and SASE says you can do that. And then merger and acquisition and divesting. These activities are very hard in a traditional model. SASE was able to help us there. It says we can draw a line so that you can separate this stuff out or bring it together. You can clearly say, because I've got the convergence of network and security, I'm basing everything on identity, that these mergers, these acquisitions, anything divested, we can draw that line to separate these users so that we can do it. SASE promised all these things, digital transformation, digital business transformation, the common words that we hear out there. But you know what the problem with promises are, and first generation, is not everything lives up to what we expected it to do. Not everything meets the challenges of what we need. And so I say with first generation SASE, and also for those of you that still have the more traditional setup, you're hitting an evolutionary border, evolutionary barrier. Because we've got this habit. We've got this habit because we've been doing hub and spoke for so long. Anything you do for 25 years is a habit, right? For 25 years, 30 years, we've been building hub and spoke. It's subconsciously in it. And the problem is, even if you may have it, or if you've even moved to SASE, to some of these first generation SASE options, even those were built with the idea that they were going to remove hub and spoke, but their architectures themselves also mimic hub and spoke. It's just, we're human. We think a little too human. We keep everything very linear, all the roads lead back to Rome so that we can do our security, so that we can be safe, so we can be secure. The problem is that's not always providing fast, secure, reliable access to my apps and data. And why is that important? Well, because if you don't have fast, secure, reliable access to data, users are going to do what they need to do to get their job done, and you end up with shadow IT or even worse. But these solutions that we have are hitting a barrier, because what we've gotten so used to is that when the need comes up, we just take another solution and bolt it on, right? We need a firewall, so we put a firewall in there. We need DLP, so we bolted on DLP. And this was okay, especially when data center was at the center, because you weren't impacting performance necessarily. Everything was close together. It kind of operated. It kind of happened. You were adding extra hops in there, but whatever. It was okay. But as everything spread out, that has impacted the performance. And we've gotten into this habit of just bolting on, stitching, praying, hoping, and just trying to explain away why everything works the way it does. Now some first generation SASE providers will say they're unified, but I will tell you there's a difference between unified and converged. Unified, well, the NFL is unified, but I would say a team is converged. Unified, we all have a goal, but we may not agree on how we're going to get there, but converged, we all have a goal, we know how to get there. This is a unified approach. Maybe these things know a bit about each other, but they're not together. But as we've been figuring out how to patch, how to put all this together, how to keep the lights on, let's keep doing all the firmware updates, let's worry about all the policies, troubleshooting, Jesus Christ, troubleshooting. All the contracts, the maintenance. We're having to do all that while at the same time, business is continuing to move forward. We're just trying to keep up, and everything's moving forward, whether that's enterprise initiatives, also known as AI for everybody today. It's taken over everything. That's moving forward. You're still trying to keep the lights on. You're still trying to figure out how we're going to solve for the problems I have today, and now I've got this new thing called AI that is dominating the markets. And then you've got compliance regulation. Regardless of where you are, this is impacting everyone. Around the world, I don't just talk to people in North Carolina. I don't talk to just people in the US. This is a global thing. And so compliance and regulation, trying to figure that stuff out. Then there's staff optimizations. That's a scary word, but it's just making sure that instead of just keeping the lights on, because we pay a lot of money for all of us to be around and for us to have jobs, how are we effectively using our time? Is it spent just trying to make sure when we're going to get the firmware out there, do the policies match? Are we optimizing our staff so that they are moving the business forward, continuing to evolve with the changes, being agile to meet the needs of a business? Or are we just busy trying to maintain this patchwork of a solution that we've got together that may get the job done, but are you agile? Are you able to meet those needs? And last, business continuity. Who can afford to go down? Raise a hand. Yeah. Nobody can afford to go down. It's extremely expensive. We have to stay up. And as our apps and as our data and as our users are everywhere, business continuity continues to be a challenge and continues to be a struggle. And how are you answering that? And if you've got first generation SASE, if you've got this hub and spoke architecture that we've all been using, you may find that you're starting to get stretched a little thin. You may be finding that you've got a problem meeting all these things. That's because the most important thing out of this paper that described what Secure Access Service Edge has been overlooked by and large, and that's the converged nature of things. So I want to give you a couple of examples because you're wondering, okay, great, Philip. You talk about convergence. What does that mean? Well, let's talk a couple of examples that have changed the world. It's changed all of our worlds, everyone in here. First, AWS. That's the convergence of infrastructure. When I got started, and for many years, when we were standing up Citrix environments, it was buy the hardware, buy the cables, get it all mounted, hope everything worked, get the OS on there, get all the supporting software on there, make sure you're connected to the databases, get connected to the network. It could take weeks, months, before you could even get to the point of starting to use the equipment that you bought for the purpose that the business needs. We were stuck with not being agile. Plus, we really didn't have a lot of visibility or context on what all was going on. It was complicated. It was complicated. It gets frantic. AWS changed that for us. Someone at Amazon, according to legend, basically said, hey, we've got these web servers with a bunch of hardware just sitting around, let's rent it out. And $1 billion industry was born. And it simplified everything for us. We found a way that we had visibility because in one dashboard, we're able to stand up an infrastructure. We're able to see what's going on. We can make decisions, and we can be agile to meet what the business needed. AWS changed for the better what data center meant for us, right? The other one, on a personal level, the phone, the iPhone. Apple changed the world for everybody simply through convergence. Think about any movie from 2005 and earlier. When they go on a road trip, how many gadgets did you have to take with you? In 1988, what were you going around with? Geez, think of the fanny packs with all the stuff in it, the camera hanging around your neck. There were so many gadgets that you needed in order to be able to function on a day-to-day basis and when you were doing things. With one simple idea of convergence, putting it in one place, It changed the world. And now we can even fold the dang thing. Convergence changed us in a way that we can't ever, and we didn't even really realize what convergence did for us. Some of you may be like, huh, that's interesting. But that is the power of convergence. The other part about this isn't just that it took away a lot of the complexity of the gadgets and got us a central place where we're able to see what was going on, able to make a decision on what we wanted to do. But it also created an ecosystem so that as I grew and as I needed to add things, it didn't add more complexity. Stuff just worked. And that's what everyone always tells you when you've got a new project or something, right? How many of you hear it? It just needs to work. Users say it, bosses say it. It just needs to work. Well, that's what convergence can get you, because in convergence, think about Apple. You had the phone, but it knows about your MacBook. It knows you go get a watch, you go get earbuds, whatever. It just works. It's part of the ecosystem. You're not having to maintain all that stuff. It's just kind of moving itself. It's maintaining itself. You're able to focus on the outcomes, not on just making all this stuff keep operating. So what does convergence mean for all of us in here when we talk about network and security? What does this change in our architecture? Because remember, this isn't just a talk about technology, because secure access service edge, zero trust, there's no new technology in any of this stuff. It's all about an architecture. It's about finding a way to deliver fast, secure, reliable access to apps and data. So in a converged architecture of network and security, the first thing you're going to always be able to get is visibility. You can see. You can see the user, you can see their device, you can see the path that they're going on. You can see the Wi-Fi signal strength for their device. You can see the middle mile that they're traversing. You can see it go through the POPs of your security provider or whatever. You can see that last mile and all the way to the destination. You suddenly have the ability to see everything that's kind of going on with your data flow, because that's what all this is, right? Like I said, it's like water. It's just going to flow. You've got to pay attention to that data flow. So if I'm able to see, now I can start to understand. I have context, because not only can I see where the user is and what they're using, but now I can understand what they're doing. And I can understand all their activities. Maybe I can understand activities going on around them. I've got visibility not just to the user, but to everything. So now I'm starting to build context. Is this person doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are they putting in information? Are they leaking anything? Did they do impossible travel? All that good stuff. I've got context of what's going on. By the way, little side note, make sure you're doing TLS inspection, folks. That's not really part of my talk, but I'm talking context and seeing. If you're not doing TLS inspection, by the way, SASE can help you with that. You're missing 90% of all the traffic that's out there in the internet. Please do that. But if you're doing all this, you can understand, you have context, and you know what you can do when you can see? Do you know what you can do when you've got context? You can enforce. You can execute. Because I understand what's going on. Look, this isn't hard, right? I'm not saying anything that's just mind-boggling new. If I can see, if I can understand, I can decide. And without a converged architecture, without sending everything and having this visibility, and without having this context, it's very hard to execute and enforce how I need to based on what's going on. And not only can I enforce, but it's instantly, it's everywhere. It's mid-session for the user. Did someone go to ChatGPT, put in some private information, some business information, proprietary stuff, and do I want to allow that? Can I make a decision mid-session to decide I don't want to do this anymore? Yes. With convergence, you have that ability to be able to do that and to have a global enforcement in just a matter of minutes not hours, not days, weeks, or months. So that's what you're getting out of it. That's what we can see, or that's what we can expect out of a converged architecture. But what's that mean to you? What's that mean to the organization? Because look, I understand, I'm talking about changing and network and security, like the fundamental elements of communications. This is the hardest thing and one of the most complex things for any organization to change. You can't do all of this at once. Look, I'm not a fool. I've been doing this long enough. I'm not saying do this all at once. You have to do this in phases. But you can expect certain outcomes that are going to come from this change, and it starts with operational simplicity. What we do today can become very complex, and if you just keep piling on to what you do, it's not just that it's hard to administer, or it gets complicated to administer, but it's complicated to manage. Like, what are the contracts, the renewals, all that. With a converged network and security platform, I'm able to simplify, not only for my administrators, not only for the operations, not only for my SOC, whatever, but for just the ownership of the solution becomes operationally simple for me to use. Next is time to protection. Time to protection. How quickly, if you have a change or the need to respond today, how quickly could you get that response out there? Whether it was a change in the network or security or both, and you've got a need today to stop a problem halfway around the world, how quickly are you going to be able to do that? If you're just here in Carolina, how quickly are you going to be able to push out changes to your branches? How quickly are you going to be able to respond when the business has a new direction that they want to go in? Because time to response isn't just about stopping threats. Time to response is also about answering the question, how do we stay agile? How do we move forward? How quickly can we do this? With a converged network and security platform, when I've got everything here and it's in an ecosystem that just operates, that is converged, that just functions and makes it simple, my time to respond is greatly decreased. My mean time to innocence, mean time to resolution, very, very quickly, very much reduced. Next, we get into the consistent experience. This is the one that we have to have. It can't matter who the user, where the user is. They could be at Starbucks, they could be at Marriott, they could be here, they may be at the branch, they may be at headquarters. It doesn't matter. You have to have a consistent experience everywhere. That outcome has to be the same. Our users demand it. How often do they say, right, it just needs to work? Again, that phrase, and I absolutely hate it, it just needs to work. It's a tough one to answer to. It just needs to work. Our users say that. They expect their work applications, their work life, to operate just like home life. Again, the convergence of the phone helped with a lot of that, because I should just be able to do it. And if I should just be able to do it, as an organization, I've got to make sure that my users have a consistent experience no matter where they are. And yes, that does mean that when they are within my building. It doesn't just mean when they are outside. It has to be consistent regardless, and you're going to get that in a converged solution. And then there's control through consolidation. This kind of rolls back up. If I've got operational simplicity, time to protection, consistent experience, then I've also got control through consolidation because I don't have so many panels. I don't have anywhere to go. You could easily see, even in first generation SASE platforms, that you've got to use multiple dashboards in order to be able to see what's going on, in order to be able to put policies in place to be able to enforce. Is your public policies different from your private policies? You can't have that. It's got to be consolidated into a single place. Because that leads to that consistency everywhere. So I need that control through consolidation because now troubleshooting is easier, maintenance becomes simpler, just the overall upkeep helps us achieve that operational simplicity that I think everybody in this room would love to be able to get. I don't think anybody likes getting that phone call in the middle of the night because something's broken. Operational simplicity, control through consolidation. And last, built to scale. Can you be agile? With convergence, you can. With convergence, I can completely expect that I can scale. When in 2020, when everything was going on, for organizations that had already adopted this method, this approach, you were able to respond over that weekend to suddenly have 10,000, 20,000 new users that are coming in remotely. Can you scale to meet those needs? How are you today? If you can't do this today, then you've got problems because everybody's scaling, everybody's growing. And trust me, AI is coming after us fast and hard, and scalability is going to be an issue. That is something, I'm probably getting ahead of myself a little bit in my own talk here, but AI is going to be a user. We can talk about that afterwards. There's so much to this that we have. We've got to be able to scale, and if you can't, you're going to be in trouble. With convergence, you can count on that. And so I want to talk about zero trust. One of the biggest use cases out there is one of the most popular topics. We talk about this one a lot. It gets interlinked with secure access service edge, but everybody's going towards zero trust. But zero trust is a framework. Zero trust is simply an outcome that we should all be trying to achieve. You go read the NIST paper. Zero trust will just lay out what you should be doing. You should be protecting it. Zero trust is going to be fundamental to, as AI is coming along, but zero trust is simply principles. And they're good principles. Don't get me wrong. Go ahead and, you constantly check, focus on identity as your point of access, constant rechecks, least privilege, micro-segmentation. Honestly, it's things that we've been trying to do for a very long time. That's why we do VLANs and firewalls inside of our own lands. We've been trying to do this for quite some time. It has not been easy. Zero trust is a framework that you can follow in order to achieve this outcome, but zero trust is not a product. Zero trust is not an architecture. Zero trust cannot get you there. It needs an architecture, and an architecture that could get you there is converged SASE. If zero trust is the what, converged SASE is more of the how. How am I going to answer for the needs? How am I going to have this simplified policy to answer for this very complicated environment that I'm going to have out there? Look, AI, as I mentioned, and I got ahead of myself a minute ago on this, but AI is a great use case when it comes to zero trust and converged SASE. I don't know how much y'all are getting into this yet, but I mean, we all are impacted in it. But you may only be thinking about AI in the aspect of what are my users doing with it? What's it built into? Are they going to ChatGPT or Gemini, or do they have it built into, Copilot in Office, where AI is really impacting it? But many organizations now are starting to build their own AI. You're putting it private AI. It's really not that complicated. I built one at home just so that I could kind of see what it was all about. And AI is very little more than a virtual device running that LLM and a whole bunch of APIs. That's really what a lot of it is. And there's a whole architecture that's going to go behind developing AI in the enterprise, not just how my users are using it, but how AI itself talks. What does the agent do? As they are able to start using their own tools, as AI can make the decision to be able to go out to the internet and search for something without me telling it to do it. If it's able to take action without a human telling it to do it, then AI is now a user. AI, we've got to start paying attention to what is it going out and doing? What is it doing with my data? That's a whole nother architecture, right? We've got two things we're going to have to solve for over the next 5 to 10 years. And if you're using a traditional model, a traditional way to approach this, you're going to have a tough time stretching all that to be able to encompass what all is going to happen. But in a converged architecture, I'm going to have that visibility, I'm going to have that context, and I'm going to be able to make enforcement decisions, right? How are we doing here? Oh man, awesome. So, what do you look for in a SASE platform? I don't know how many of you were already familiar with what Secure Access Service Edge is before you got here, or had heard all these things. But now you may be like, okay, great, Philip. You're telling me all these things, it's kind of interesting. But there are a lot of vendors out there that say they do Secure Access Service Edge. You have a lot of decisions. And you know, one of the struggles in that is there's no real authority to tell you who's doing it right. Which one should you go by? There's the paper you can follow, you know, where it tells you, you know, it's network security, converged. You're taking all those security tools and moving them to the edge, the DLP, Secure Web Gateway, blah, 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 CASB. But how that's done, how that solution does it is just as important as making the decision to actually go with a SASE solution. The first thing, is it native convergence? Did they start out as something else and just bolt on these other things that were needed? Whether it was a product that they already had, whether it was something that they acquired. Did they just go take that, bolt it on, and say that that was converged? Or are they just telling you it's unified? You've got to have a native convergence, a platform that started with the idea that network and security were one. Because then you end up with that single pane of glass, that term that we all love to hear that phrase, right? But it truly does get you to that point where you've got one place to go to be able to manage both your security and network through policy. Unified, it doesn't cut it. Native convergence is really to look at. Now native, I want to kind of caveat this a little bit. Maybe an organization does go in and acquire, because nobody from the very beginning knows all the answers for how they're going to deliver something. And that includes the SASE providers. So I'm not knocking if they go and do an acquisition or add something on. But what I'm saying, is it converged and not unified? Is it part of the same team, or is it just kind of part of the overall ecosystem? How well do they know each other? How well do they interact? Are my logs in one place? And that leads to the next one of unified policy and visibility. In a converged SASE, I'm going to get that. If it is not, like many of the first generations, I'm still going to multiple places to be able to set up my policy, multiple consoles. My private access may be a different policy from my public access, sure. But if I've got to go to different places, that means, and if I've got different products that are just under one umbrella, that means I'm having to go multiple places, not just to set up my policy, but also to check my logs, to see what's going on when troubleshooting happens. If you've got to go 4 or 5 different places, that's just taking longer. You're taking more time to understand what's going on. A SASE platform should truly bring that together. And yes, I use the word unified here. I know some of you probably snickered, hey Philip, I thought it was about converged. I really thought about not putting unified in there, but you know what? It kind of applies, so here we are. Time to protection. What to look for in a SASE platform, how quickly can it respond? How much agility is it going to give you in your platform or in your environment? How quickly can you respond when there is a need, whether it's security, whether it's network, whether it's geo expansion, whether it's an emergency? How quickly can you get that protection in there? How quickly can you get a new branch spun up? How quickly can you respond to that merger announcement? How quickly can you get this all done? And zero trust everywhere, our next one. If I've got native convergence, unified visibility, and time to protection, the next thing I need is zero trust everywhere. It can't just be an afterthought because, quite honestly, if I've got everything converged, if I'm building all my policies in one place and I've got all this visibility, zero trust almost becomes native. It almost becomes an afterthought because you're building a policy that says this user can access this app this way, and they can't get to anything else, right? That's one thing that zero trust secure access service edge gives us, is limits the blast radius because we're not just using flat networks anymore, right? We're able to say, hey, you can get to here, and that's it. In a truly converged SASE platform, you get this just natively. That zero trust everywhere just happens. And that's not a bad thing. And then future ready. Look for a future ready platform. What's going to be able to grow with you? What's going to be able to shift? What is going to be able to answer for AI as we're starting to tackle that? And there's another one that's on this that AI is going to do. I firmly believe that applications are going to explode that we're going to have to watch for in the enterprise, because now with vibe coding, cursor, what did AWS just released, the ability to create an application got stupid easy. I told you I was building an AI at home. I built a whole application. I'm not an app developer. I stink at it, man. My ADHD, I can't pay attention long enough. I can't stand code. I started with Pascal, and that's probably why I hate coding. But I can't stand it. But I was able to go sit down and over the past few weeks have built an application, and that's going to happen in every one of your enterprises when there's a need. No longer do I have to go buy something. Hey man, I can just spin something up. Doesn't that terrify you? Doesn't that terrify? Because we don't all get told what's going on. There's so much that happens in our enterprise networks, and then we discover it after the fact. If I don't have convergence, visibility, protection, and zero trust, then I'm not ready for that's coming. So it's not just AI that's going to take over, but just the applications that are available are going to explode. So here's what I want to leave you with. What are you building towards? I've talked about a couple different models, a couple different architectures. And, are you building an architecture that is kind of just stitched together, duct taped, put together with a little fishing wire, hoping for the best? And you know what? I say that kind of as a little bit of a jab, but truthfully, I know, because with every organization, this is the one snowflake moment that we get. All of our stuff is truly a little bit different, and you may have a need for this. And if this is what you need, then keep doing it. I'm not going to hate on you, because at the end of the day, what's it about? Fast, secure, reliable access to apps and data. And maybe this model is working. We should talk about that. But maybe it's working, right? There's a lot of legacy stuff out there that we've got to account for, and that's just not going to change. But if you didn't give me a reasonable reason on why you're doing the patching and stitching and duct taping and fish wire, are you building toward an infrastructure that's built to work as one? Are you building toward that converged architecture that's going to allow you to have that visibility, that context, that ability to enforce, make a decision in the moment? So I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to just kind of leave it there and let you keep thinking about it, because remember, at the end of the day, the biggest question, the sign that we're slapping, is fast, secure, reliable access to apps and data. All this rest is just extra, it's just fluff. How are you going to get there so that you're able to provide that, not only for your users, but also making sure that your organization stays safe? I want you to think about that. So, thank you for your time. For the rest of the day, I will be at the Cato booth today. If you have any questions, if you want to come tell me about stories of things that you're struggling with. If you want to tell me about what you've done that's really cool and amazing, I'd love to hear about it. And thank you very much.